to give me bigger fruit, more fruit, and resistance to many common diseases. This process is called grafting, and I'm going to show you the cheapest, easiest way to do it at home. First, stock tomato, and then cut a slit about 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep on it. The rootstock is grown just for the roots. It doesn't taste good, but it is a prolific producer and resistant to many.
Ever wonder how they're able to grow a seedless watermelon without a seed? Spoiler alert, they don't. Watermelons are a lot like humans. We're both diploids, and all that means is we have 2 sets of chromosomes. But scientists discovered that adding colchicine, a drug that treats gout, turned this diploid into a tetraploid. By breeding a male diploid with a female tetraploid, they're able to end up with a triploid, and this odd set of chromosomes will result in the fruit being sterile and not producing any seed.
Wild side and like to use public jacuzzis, listen to the 3 tips on when never to get in one. These tips are from a jacuzzi manufacturer. They said if you see foam when the jets are turned off, it means it's not filtering properly. Don't get in. If you see scum along the sides of it, it means it's not being cleaned properly. Don't get in. And if you can't see to the bottom, it means that the chemicals are not working or there's not enough. Don't get in.
Seed under your tongue before planting may be the key to miracle health and longevity. Now, this process is actually called signature planting, and it is said that when you place a seed under your tongue for 7 seconds, it will actually start to interact with your DNA.
That is actually a high-frequency device, and it works by heating up your sebaceous glands and therefore killing the bacteria causing your acne. It can also reduce the sebum production and clog your pores. This is the full list of benefits. Pause if you want to read. There's actually 2 types of devices that you can choose from. Argon is for acne and neon is for wrinkles.
Because look, this one is yellowing. Time to take it out. Let's go do a new one. First things first, grab your pack of BBs. Step 2. Brush your teeth, assist. If you're not gagging, you're not doing it right. Put this on high. Oh, I made, oh wow, that's not even for, okay, well, put it on high. Find you a metal spoon. A metal spoon. Spoon. And get your BBs out the bag. You only need like 4. Depending on how much tooth you're missing, you may need more than just 4, but a few droplets of water. See, not too much. And then you boil that bit. I'm running out of time, but when they turn clear, I rolled it into a ball. I can hold it.
Scissors and comb in one tool. It's Unical, the most versatile cutting tool in the world.
This is the New York City Museum where a Congolese man was held captive and then later on displayed with monkeys in the Bronx Zoo.
In 1883, Otobenga was born in the region that is now known as the Congo in Africa. But a few years later, the Belgian military under King Leopold attacked his tribe and killed his family. Otobenga was later captured by an American businessman and taken to the 1904 St. Louis World Fair, where he was displayed and labeled a savage and a cannibal. But at that time, he actually befriended a famous Native American man named Geronimo, who was similarly exploited. After that, they took Otobenga here to the Museum of Natural History in New York City, where they held him, but he resisted and he threw a chair at some wealthy funders who were visiting the museum. They notoriously took him to the Bronx Zoo, where they displayed him in a monkey cage. Black American leaders like Reverend James H. Gordon protested, and they were able to get him released, and they took him under their care down in Brooklyn. But later on, Otobenga grew so depressed that he would never go back home that he ended up taking his own life. There we go. Oh.
Oh, look at him settle into it. Oh, buddy. Yes. My good man, to the market.
I'm sure you've seen these clay tablets before. Lots of ancient civilizations use them for writing, but what I didn't know until very recently is that these were supposed to be reusable. They were like Etch-a-Sketches. After you were done with it, since clay is pretty soft, you would take some water, put it on the surface, then rewrite something new. But here is one of the great ironies of history. If you put clay in an oven, you get pottery, right? You fire it. And so a lot of the clay tablets we have today, we have because some invading army was trying to wipe out a culture and burn down their libraries, and yet they actually accidentally preserved this stuff for thousands of years and are the reason we have it today.
73-year-old Algerian woman presented to an emergency with abdominal pain. They did studies of her abdomen and found this. She had a lithopedion.
Imagine the outcry of state officials announced a plan to remove 1/4 of all Caucasian children from their families and place them in other homes. Yet until 1978, this was happening to Native children for decades with hardly a ripple of protest outside of the Native community. Between 25 and 35% of all Native children had been removed from their families and placed in foster or adoptive homes or residential institutions. These percentages were far more higher than white children. The Indian Child Welfare Act, or ICWA, was passed by Congress in 1978 to address these problems. ICWA seeks to accomplish these goals by limiting the state's ability to remove Native children from their families and by giving tribal courts primary jurisdiction on most Native cases.
Remembered his past, claimed he remembered his past. This boy claimed he remembered his past life until his parents discovered he wasn't lying. A Syrian boy named Arius was born with a particular red birthmark on his face. As soon as he could speak, he explained to his parents that he had already lived another life as a different man, claiming he was actually murdered with an axe by his own neighbor. Turns out, a man had actually gone missing in their village years earlier, and the neighbor was the prime suspect. So Arius and his parents went to the neighbor's house to find out the truth. When the neighbor opened the door, he turned white as a ghost, claiming he was innocent. But Arius demanded the neighbor come with him because he knew where his body was actually buried. Arius led them miles from the village to a specific spot under a tree, and they began digging. They found a skull that was cracked exactly where Arius's birthmark was. Everyone was shocked, and the neighbor was later arrested.
Is when a woman marries another woman, but it's not in a romantic nature. If a woman is older, a widow, can't have children, or has no boys in her family, she would marry another woman so that she could inherit wealth, property, and maintain her own lineage. This practice has been documented in the Igbo of southeastern Nigeria, the Zulu of southern Africa, and the Nuer of East Africa. In many societies that practice this tradition, only wealthy women could become female husbands, and once they did, they oftentimes gained even more wealth and power. They even had more freedom when it came to sexuality. They could have an anonymous boyfriend whose only purpose was to produce an heir for the wives to raise together. Any child that they had with their anonymous boyfriend would be taken care of by their female husband, and it would carry her name. This child would also be considered completely legitimate in the eyes of society. Women husbands pay bride price, have ceremonies, and are oftentimes seen as equal with their male counterparts.
Ever try this? You can remember who you were in a past life by drawing this symbol on a piece of paper. Now get a mirror that you can stand in front of. Grab the paper in your left hand and look at yourself in the mirror. Then say, "This is me now, show me then." If done correctly, you'll have a huge flood of memories coming in. But not every past life is good and something that should be seen.
Been pumping, right? I told you when you first started off in your tank, you take 2, put it in on an empty tank. It's a Dodge Ram 1500 Hemi right here. I ain't never put no regular unleaded in here. Watch this now. Regular unleaded, 87. But this Fuel Factor X, what NASA be using, is a high power potent gasoline supplement, man, that'll take this regular unleaded and turn it into like 94, like Exxon used to have before they stopped selling the 94 when they dropped down to 93. This like 94, 95 octane.
You know, my country was the first where they made cash illegal. 2016, digitalization was forced on the country. 8 o'clock in the evening, announced midnight, cash was illegal, the big notes. And 70% of the economy crashed. This digitalization is now going all over the world, and there's a war on cash. They call it war on cash. Because Cash is merely a medium of exchange. It has no value in itself. It's just a promise. You read the dollar note, it says, I promise to pay the bearer. When it's digital, even a credit card, you're giving rents to the global financial system. But when it's cryptocurrency in the hands of algorithms, in the hands of big tech, they will do what is happening in China. Create social credit system to decide a new caste system. And you might have also followed that while all this has been happening, the founder of the World Economic Forum did a book called The Great Reset.
The treadmill, a device originally created to torture black prisoners. 200 years ago, the treadmill was created in England as a rehabilitation prisoner device. William Cubitt, a civil engineer, created the device in 1818, which was first called the tread wheel. Early prisons did not offer inmates food or clothing, and their families had to bring things in. This led to the bribing of prison guards, and basically inmates became more skilled at crimes. With nothing to do inside, the treadmill became of use. At first, it was used to grind corn or pump water as a means of exercise, but by 1842, treadmills were being used in 109 of 200 jails across England, Wales, and Scotland, predominantly Jamaican jails. The English felt like it was the best method of punishment because it made them sweat and think about their crimes. So they would have to roll on the treadmill, and if anyone fell off, they got whipped, like this picture above. The English felt like, but it didn't stop there. By 1822, it made its way to the US. It was briefly popular at the prison in New York City on East 26th Street. And it sort of phased out once prisons realized that they can just use the inmates to make shoes and clothes. In 1913, it resurfaced with a US patent called Training Machine, and in the 1960s, the mechanical engineer William Stubb created a home fitness machine called the Pacemaster 600.
The 1950s Dodge Power Wagon fitted with Roll-A-Gon tires, which are basically giant low-pressure balloons. This helps you cross almost any obstacle without getting punctures or getting stuck. And
that those old fireplaces wasn't used for burning coal and wood, and you didn't believe me. But when I say I got your ass, oh, I've got your ass. So, this is how the fireplace used to work. There would be a metal plate at the back of the firebox which would reflect infrared rays when the fireplace was heated up. There would also be 2 ether capacitors in the fireplace which provokes eddy currents in the metal frame which transmits them to the metal plate at the back. Eddy currents are current loops formed over conductor surfaces due to changing magnetic flux. They are useful in induction heating, levitating, electromagnetic damping, and electromagnetic braking. So the fireplace and the roof are both connected by metal bondings through the chimney. The whole construction becomes one solid conductor, and then the energy that's gathered from the ether gets converted into heat. In other situations, they even used radium for heating. I guess that's the reason why we're still calling radiators even till this day. I mean, come on, brother. Do you really think they was burning wood and coal in these fireplaces? That's what the...
Some that we already all know: Ben & Jerry's, Cheetos, Cheerios, Ford, Fruit of the Loom, Target, Walmart, and even General Motors. They say that these kids are being placed inside of factories and being forced to make Made in America tags for J. Crew shirts. They can also bake dinner rolls for Walmart and Target, and even process the milk used in Ben & Jerry's. And illegal child labor cases have more than tripled since 2015.
So, my ancestors were asked by white men to come to this country, which they had stolen and forced black people to build, because they were hoping that my ancestors would be the new cheap and disposable labor to undercut the recently freed black people that lazy white men didn't want to pay. And when my ancestors wouldn't do that, they were lynched and massacred, their towns were destroyed, they were blown up while building the railroads, and ultimately they were excluded from society in the country for nearly 60 years. Then when the United States asked us to come back in the 1960s because they wanted to put us in the way of black people again, and the United States needed to rehabilitate its reputation with Asian countries that were gaining in economic and political power. We had civil rights because of black people.
Why is there a giant survival bunker complex for the rich in South Dakota?
Do you all remember these childhood memories when our hair was pulled by grandma early morning like this when we were suffering from cough due to uvula inflammation? This is nothing but marma therapy. Even till today, the modern science cannot answer how this was working. After 2 or 3 days of this therapy, we were so fit and fine, and we used to get rid of vulva inflammation.
This nurse got caught trying to unalive a newborn. Lucy Letby was a nurse in England in 2015 and 2016. She took the lives of 7 newborns by injecting milk, air, or insulin in their bloodstream. The hospital found out when they were suddenly getting a rise in their mortality rate in their neonatal unit. And doctors started to notice after investigating that all the newborns were under Lucy's care. And air in a twin boy's bloodstream, and he passed away, and then tried doing it to his sister, but she survived. Police eventually searched her home and found confession notes that Lucy wrote to herself, saying things like, "I did it on purpose because I'm not good enough to take care of them."
St. Patrick and the destruction of the Serpentine matriarchs.
This is going to ruin it for a lot of people that love St. Patrick's Day. First of all, it has nothing to do with Irish pride. That's how it was shown later. There's nothing to do with leprechauns or Irish pride. It has nothing to do with that.
You just killed 2 great fantasies.
I know.
Right there.
Really, if you look into what that was, is that St. Patrick, right, the St. Patrick was a Roman. His father was a Roman official, and he was tasked, just like the Roman Empire did with destroying the Gnostic people who originally were the Egyptians and burning the Library of Alexandria. He was tasked with going to Ireland and the UK and Scotland area, but we specifically think of it as Ireland because that was the core of this,
right.
Where they went there and they were supposed to eradicate the last group on the planet that was still studying was that ancient old religion who were known as the serpents. So if you look at the story of St. Patrick, he was ridding the serpents, the snakes, right? The snakes from Ireland. But if you look all throughout geologic history of that region, there's never been snakes that lived there. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the Druid people and pagans as a more general term, anyone who didn't follow this monotheistic Christian religion. And they were seen as a threat because they were the last group that had the ancient knowledge, and they were greatly demonized later. So what happened was, you're celebrating the representation of the genocide and cleansing of the last serpent group on the planet, the Druids who built Stonehenge.
That pregnancy can cause diabetes, your heart and feet to grow.
Add this to your list. Did you also know that when you give birth and the placenta gets removed, it leaves a wound the size of a dinner plate inside your uterus? A fucking dinner plate. Did you know that when you have a C-section, sometimes where they cut along, the nerves never grow back, and sometimes you lose the ability to feel that you have to go pee? It's super fun. Did you know that the calcium that makes babies' bones when they're in utero comes from our own bones, and that's why our teeth fall out? Do you know that one of the ways that you could die during childbirth, either vaginal or C-section, is because the amniotic fluid can get into your bloodstream through a cut or a tear? Did you know that in a few instances, babies kick their mothers inside so hard that it actually fractured their ribs? Some women have had their tailbone broken during delivery. But most importantly, did you know that when you get pregnant, you get treated as a second-class citizen and everything will be done to save the baby and fuck your own life? And men wonder why the birth rate is declining.
Let's talk about the time a black-owned beach in California was taken away from its owners for no reason at all. Let's talk about Bruce Beach. Now, in the 20th century, racism and swimming went hand in hand. Swimming pools and beaches was something that was regularly gatekept from black people. When 1912, Willa and Charles Bruce purchased a chunk of beachfront off Manhattan Beach in Los Angeles County and called it Bruce Beach. Their goal was to provide a beach oasis for black people. It would be a resort. They sold swimming trunks and swimwear and snacks and food. And in the 1910s and early 1920s, black people flocked to this beach. And they faced their fair share of harassment. The KKK, local police, and homeowners did everything they could to deter this endeavor. In 1924, the Manhattan Beach Board just took the beach, only reimbursed the Bruces $14,500. Took it in 1924, but the land wasn't used until 1950. The land's now worth $20 million. In April of 2021, the city of Los Angeles did the right thing and returned it to the descendants of the Bruces. A century too late.